whenever I fulfill my purpose, everything around me gets better. Everyone else is served. I think a lot of people think if you follow your bliss, that somehow you're being selfish. And my experience is when you do that, it may look selfish, you may think about it being selfish, but everybody is served by it. At the very least level, you're a model for what it looks like to follow your bliss. Your children are learning that, your neighbors are learning that, your students are learning that.
Welcome to Living in the Miracle Zone. This is the place to be if you want to live in the flow of synchronicities and miracles in your everyday life. I'm your host, Marci Shimoff. I'm a #1 New York Times bestselling author, a teacher in The Secret, and the creator of the worldwide program, Your Year of Miracles. And I have spent my life studying happiness and miracles. And in this podcast, we bring to you extraordinary stories that will inspire you and groundbreaking miracle tools that will show you how that you can live your most miraculous life. And it is my heartfelt intention that we have a fabulous time together. So welcome to the Miracle Zone. And today I am joined by someone very special in my life and who many of you know, and that is the brilliant and wonderful Jack Canfield. Hi, Jack. I'm so excited to have you here.
Well, I'm always love to be with you, Marci. Thank you.
Well, let me introduce you formally to everyone, and then I'll tell people a few behind the scenes things. So you probably know Jack Canfield as America's #1 success coach. He's a best-selling author. He's a professional speaker and a trainer and an entrepreneur. He has conducted trainings for more than 1 million people in over 50 countries. He holds 2 Guinness World Record titles, and he's a member of the National Speakers Association Speakers Hall of Fame. And Jack has co-authored more than 200 books, including the Success Principles and the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. He has sold more than 500 million copies of his books in 47 languages around the world. Jack is also in the movie The Secret that I'm in, and he's appeared on more than 1,000 radio and TV shows, including Oprah. And the most important thing about Jack to me is that Jack has had the biggest influence on my career than anybody on the planet. I've considered Jack my mentor. I started studying with him in 1989. And of course, he was very generous to allow me to co-author with him the Chicken Soup for the Women's Soul books and Mother's Soul books. He's founded an organization called TLC, the Transformational Leadership Council, that I'm a member of. And Jack, you continue to inspire me all the time. And I have to say, it's ongoing. It never ends with you.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
So I want to start where I start with everybody on this podcast. And that is, you didn't always live a miraculous life. You do live a miraculous life. What do you think shifted for you? How did you come to live a more miraculous life?
Well, I go back to, I grew up in a house that cost $18,000. It was a very small little hovel in West Virginia. And I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to go to Harvard University because I played football and I was pretty good at it. And majored in Chinese history, which has prepared me not for this work, but for just, studying. But what happened was I got out of college and I went to graduate school to become a teacher. And I taught in an all-black inner city school. I lived in an apartment that cost $79 a month. It had a Murphy bed that came out of the wall, a little tiny refrigerator like the ones you find in a hotel room, and a 2-burner stove, electrical plug-in thing. And so, I got paid $129 every 2 weeks for teaching. And basically the first week, the $79 went out. I had about, $50 left for everything, and including food and travel and, all that. So I live in a pretty poor life, if you will. I ate what I call my 20-cent dinners, with a can of tomato paste with water and garlic salt, and then a little package of noodles. That was like a cheap spaghetti, I guess. And so that's how it all started. And fortunately, right around that time, I met a man named W. Clement Stone. Someone said, I was really interested in how I was going to help my students have more self-esteem because I was really clear that they needed to know history, but they also needed more than that. And so someone said, there's this foundation. They teach achievement motivation, how to motivate people to achieve things. So I said, I'm going to go do that. And W. Clement Stone was a self-made, he was worth $500, $600 million at that time. Today, he'd be a billionaire by the inflation. And so what happens was I worked for him, and then I started getting asked to go and teach seminars around the Midwest, teaching, his principles. But his principles were things like knowing your life purpose, positive thinking, law of attraction, set goals, do affirmations, visualize your success, be clear about your values, take action now, respond to feedback, so forth. So the core of what I learned when I created my magical life, but also what I teach in my seminars and a lot of what you learned from me as well, I learned then. And as a result of that, he said one year, I want you to set a goal that's so big that if you achieved it, you'd blow your own mind. And at the time, I was making about $8,000 a year. And so I said, okay, $100,000 a year income. And some part of me was like, you're kidding me. But anyway, I decided to do it. And I made a $100,000 bill. I took a $100 bill, which I didn't have many of, and I put it on an overhead slide, and I projected it onto a big sheet of paper, and I copied it. And then I added extra zeros, and I put it on my ceiling. And sure enough, by the end of the year, I made $92,328. And that was the beginning of like, wow, I can have an amazing life. And this is the first time I could afford a car and, have put a down payment on my house with my wife. And life took off. It was amazing. But I'm going to say that's really what happened was, I think, they always say when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And I was ready. And I took everything he did and I used it. And that was the reality of it. And then, from there, I went on, started my own company. And I'll say this too. When I started my own company, I had 2 black file cabinets and a hollow core door spread on top of it with an IBM typewriter. If you remember a Selectric typewriter, which had the little white tape, you could go back and type over it.
I remember. That's how I learned to type.
Yeah. And I didn't even have a computer. And then eventually I hired Patty, who, Patty Aubrey, who's been my business partner for 30 plus years. And she knew how to use a computer. So we got this little Mac. You remember they had like a little tiny screen and the green letters. And that's how we started. And I would literally go to UCLA and with a stapler and some posters for a seminar I was going to do and put it on the bulletin boards all around the campus. So it didn't start out where I had like 12-person team doing social media and all of that. But I would say W. Clement Stone was the beginning, and then applying those principles. And I would just add, finally, I learned to meditate. That changed everything, going inside and really learning to access my intuition, to trust my inner guidance, to calm myself, to access higher levels of consciousness. So the combination of those two, the spiritual and the practical, has really made my life is amazing. I mean, I'm happily married. I live on a 3-acre estate. My house is worth now about $8.5 million, I'm told. I travel around the world. I get paid $60,000 a day when I travel internationally and speak. And, so when you say magical life, it's absolutely that.
And, Jack, one of the things that I so appreciate about you, and I've observed over the last, I think, 35 years since I've known you, is that you are the consummate learner. You at the Transformational Leadership Council, we always have speakers come in. You're in the front row. You're taking notes. You're applying it. I mean, you just celebrated your 80th birthday, and you're a lifelong learner, and you apply it. And I love that you started with W. Clement Stone. I now consider myself in his downline. What went to you came to me. I know that to me is one of the reasons that you continue that you live this successful life is that you are always open, learning, and applying. So you're the master of success with the success principles. I remember it's 64 principles you have in the success principles. And I remember flying down to help you on the editing of that book. And you had more than 64 principles. It was hard for you to narrow it down to those 64. So I want to know, of all of those principles, what 1 or 2 do you feel have been really instrumental for you and that you keep coming back to? How do you keep coming back to that principle, and how does it apply in your life now?
Well, I think the number one principle is take 100% responsibility for your life and no blaming, no complaining. As you know, we teach this concept called E plus R equals O, events plus your response to that event equals an outcome. And all our outcomes that we're currently experiencing, our weight, the quality of our relationships, how much money we have, how much impact we're having in the world, are all the result of decisions we made in response to events that occurred earlier. You know, the recession comes along, and the pandemic, a better example, is more recent. And a lot of people went bankrupt. A lot of people just, their whole business and life turned upside down. And yet there were those of us who pivoted, who started going online, doing, Zoom calls and coaching groups and virtual seminars and so forth, that survived. And so it's not the event, it's our response to it. And so what I've done is I've literally looked at the most successful people in the world in every field I could find, whether I could interview them, read a book they wrote, watch a TED Talk they gave, etc. And I've read over 3,000 books. You'd say I'm a constant learner. But what the reality is that Tony Robbins says it best. He says, success leaves clues. And so the clues are in the books or in the seminars or in podcasts like this, whatever. And I always wanted to learn those clues. And so I would say that taking 100% responsibility, not blaming someone else, realizing if it's going to be, it's up to me, is one of the phrases my mentor said to me at one point in time. Always believing there's a solution, and it's my job to find it. And I can also ask people for support, as you and I both do. Chicken Soup for the Soul took off because I asked John Gray, who was the best-selling author of Men Are From Mars. I asked, wrote the 1 Minute Manager, Ken Blanchard, all these different people who had best-selling books. I said, what could you teach me about having a best-selling book? And they told me, and I did everything they said. So it's one thing to know it, it's another thing to do it. So another big principle for me is you got to take action. Our friend John Assaraf, who has what he calls the law of Goya, Goya. And I said, what's that? He says, get off your ass. So that's the idea is you got to go do the things. You get intuitive downloads, you read a book, you get an idea, and then it's the doingness of it and the doing it over and over and over consistently. I think persistence has been a big thing for me, and scheduling. I always say if it's not in your schedule, I'm going to write. Well, when? If you schedule from like 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the morning, 3 days a week, then it's on your schedule. And a lot of people never get around to it. And I don't know why, but all these phrases are coming to my head right now. It's like some days not a day of the week, and so like you don't want to be on someday I'll, like someday I'll do that, like someday island. But the point being that I think that's critical. I've always been someone to take action and to reject rejection. As you know, that 144 times Chicken Soup for the Soul was rejected by publishers. So that's a big one for me. And I think also, if you know your purpose, and most people don't. In other words, we all were born with a purpose, something you were meant to express, share, create, do, and it's yours. It might be in music, it might be in entertainment, it could be like you and me in the human potential movement, it could be building buildings. We need buildings. We need people to fix the airplanes who love to do mechanical things. And once you know what you're about, why you're here, what your gifts are, what your talents are, and you go and you do that, what happens is that you succeed in ways that most people never do. And so you can create a vision and set goals to achieve that. And, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I wouldn't have been a very good one because I would hear both sides. I'd have a hard time taking one side. But that's what I went off to school to become. And when I decided to do the work I'm doing now, my dad said, can't you just get a job with a company, where you have a pension and you'll be secure? And I said, no, I can't do that. So I'd say the last thing I would say is follow your inner guidance, follow your heart, do the things that make you come alive. There's that wonderful quote that says, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, because people who come alive is what the world needs. And so basically, I'm constantly going to the next thing that turns me on. One thing about the law of attraction, Marci, and this, is a lot of people think it's all about attracting stuff to us, but it's also trusting what you're attracted to and then following that. And it may not make any sense in the beginning, but over time you look back and you go, all those dots got connected. It made total sense. My life was almost like ordained when I look back at it.
I love that. And Jack, I'm so grateful that you did follow your passion, because if you didn't follow your passion, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so it's the
Hmm.
ripple effect too, And my parents told me the same thing. You're going to be a speaker? Why don't you just go get a job, in a big company? And so
Yeah.
I really believe that that's so important, that we do what it is, our dharma, what it is, our purpose is. I also want to comment about the first principle you mentioned, which is take 100% responsibility for your life, and how the events don't determine the outcome. It's our responses that do. I just got back from South Africa, and everywhere in South Africa, of course, are pictures or statues of Nelson Mandela. And his story is so extraordinary because he went into prison as this angry, really intense activist. And he said he used prison to change himself. And he came out a changed man. Now, the event of prison is not a great event, but it was his
Right.
response to that shifted him. And I think that that's such a key principle. And I'm wondering, all of these principles of success, there's such an overlap with living in the miracle zone. So in your perspective, what does living a successful life have to do with living a miraculous life?
Well, it depends on how you want to define them. I used to think of success as being able to do whatever I wanted to do whenever I wanted to do it, and produce the results I wanted, whether it was write a book or get into a good relationship or be able to take a trip, around the world, whatever. And I would say 10 years ago, I changed my definition to fulfilling my soul's purpose. And it goes back to this idea of what's your purpose. And I think if you fulfill your purpose, then you have been a success. It may not look like the big car, the big mansion, the, whatever, big bank account, and two houses on Long Island, whatever. But I think that reality is that you're happy, you're satisfied, you're fulfilled. And I think, unfortunately, as much as my early life was very much service oriented, a lot of it was about proving to myself that I was worthwhile to even live on the planet. Like I had to prove that I was significant, that I made a difference. And so often I would do things to get that extra line on my resume or be able to say I was on Oprah or whatever. And it might have been something that took me away from my family. I didn't make any money. I, traveled. I was tired a lot, whatever. And now I really just ask myself, is this going to help me fulfill my purpose? And whenever I fulfill my purpose, everything around me gets better. Everyone else is served. I think a lot of people think if you follow your bliss, that somehow you're being selfish. And my experience is when you do that, it may look selfish. You may think about it being selfish, but everybody is served by it. At the very least level, you're a model for what it looks like to follow your bliss. Your children are learning that. Your neighbors are learning that. Your students are learning that. But also, ultimately, I went off and did Chicken Soup for the Soul, which my staff at the time thought, with it, this is crazy. We're doing corporate training, and you're going to write a book called Chicken Soup for the Soul. Can't you write The Eighth Habit of a Highly Successful Person or something like that? So how to sell more widgets. I said, no, I'm going to do this. And at first, we got a lot of rejection. Didn't take off as a bestseller right away, but we did our rule of five, or every day we did 5 things to master the marketing of that and get out to people. And eventually it took off. The book itself has made me tens of millions of dollars, but the speaking that came out of it, I've spoken in 50 countries around the world as a result of that book. All of that came, and that to me is miraculous, being able to go around the world. I think miracles would be the things you don't quite think are possible, and yet they happen anyway. And sometimes they fulfill you in a way you didn't even know. Like I would imagine when you were doing safari in Africa, that was like fulfilling at a whole other level than if you'd never done that, because it's like it is magical. But I think when we get connected to nature, everything I've ever done that was connected to nature, whether it was going on a outward bound experience or scuba diving in Hawaii or mountain climbing or taking plant medicine, whatever, has always led to the most amazing experiences I've ever had.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that response and answer, because I think for me, living in the miracle zone is being in that flow of life, being in that place of synchronicity, of flow. And that happens when you are doing what it is you're here to do. And that can
Hmm.
change, over time. It's about being attuned to what's calling you right now. And I think that, it's not that. I really appreciate your new definition of success that you shifted to 10 years ago, which is about living your purpose, because that's being in the miracle zone. And so I'm wondering what you think or what you've seen are some of people's biggest blocks to living that miraculous life or living that successful life in the terms how you define success. You mentioned not feeling worthy. I certainly think that's one of the big ones. So what have you
Yeah.
seen are people's blocks?
Well, I would say they fall into three categories. One is lack of awareness. You don't know what to do. People listening to you, taking your courses, taking my course, are learning things that get them into the miracle zone, get them into the flow of their life, etc. Get them in touch with their purpose, give them permission and support in doing that expression. But I also think it's limiting beliefs and fears. So basically, we all have beliefs, and I'm not worthy. I'm not blank enough. And we can fill in the blank. I'm not pretty enough, young enough, old enough, experienced enough, rich enough, connected enough, whatever, to do the thing I want to do. That what happens is that belief then stops us from taking the actions we need to take. And the unfortunate part of this is that many of the beliefs that are stopping us are unconscious. In other words, sometime between the age of 3 and 8, we had some rejection experience, some traumatic experience. Maybe we got bullied, or it could be as simple as you didn't make the swimming team, whatever. But then you made a decision. I'm not okay. I have to be subdued. I can't make noise. I can't ask for what I want. I can't be self-serving, whatever. And then later you go to reach for the phone to call somebody and you can't make yourself pick up the phone. You don't know why. But in there's a belief that if I ask for something, I'm weak. Or if I ask for something, I'm going to get rejected. And that rejection is going to affirm that I'm not worthy. So basically, I think the work that I see that needs to be done for most people, and it's the most fascinating part of my work right now, is helping people become aware of and then release and replace those limiting beliefs. And there's a couple of really cool processes you can use to do that. And I learned as many as I can. And I would say, I don't know if you know this, but twice a year, I'll get 2,000 people on the phone free, and I'll go through an hour-long webinar with them on belief change. And I would say 90% of the people say it's one of the most profound experiences of their life. And it was an hour. But nobody has those tools. We weren't taught those tools. And so we walk around with these beliefs that block us. And then the fear that we have, of something bad is going to happen. We scare ourselves by imagining something in the future that's going to be bad, usually because we have something in the past that was similar that was not great. I just shared a personal experience. I remember in Sunday school, I was reading the Bible. I was supposed to read this passage of the Bible, and I got to the word WOMB. I'd never seen that word. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know how to pronounce it. But the only word I could remember that was similar was BOMB, bomb. So I said, Jesus sprung from Mary's womb. And everybody laughed, And I think for a long time I was never going to read anything in public again because I didn't want to have that experience of being laughed at. And so sometimes those things happen and you're 50 years old and they're still running you. And if we can help people release those, then their natural self emerges and all the beautiful things of living in the miracle zone, being successful, et cetera, begin to happen.
So what's one thing, and this may be an impossible question to answer in this context, but what's one thing we could all do to help release any limitations or beliefs that are holding us back or fears?
Well, I'll share two. One's simple and the other is more complex. And I think the more complex ones may be a little more powerful. There's something called EFT tapping. I know you know about it, the emotional freedom technique. And originally you could tap on a feeling, like you have this feeling of fear. So you could say, I have this, even though I have this feeling of fear, I totally and unconditionally love myself. As you tap on your palm of your hand, you do it 3 times. Then there's these 9 acupuncture points that you press and you tap as you say this fear of rejection or this fear of being laughed at or whatever. And you go through about 5 or 6 cycles of that. And I've seen people literally disappear fears. And then what happens is they've started saying, you can disappear beliefs. So this belief that I'm not worthy, this belief that I'm not smart enough, whatever. And we can tap that away as well. So I would say you could go to YouTube. I have videos, or many, probably hundreds of people have EFT tapping videos you can tap along with. And you can begin to look at, and that works for the conscious beliefs, the things that we know about ourselves. I'm afraid to do this. I don't think I'm worthy. I'm not smart, whatever. But the other one is to deal with how do we surface the limiting beliefs that are unconscious. And what happens every time you're triggered, we all get triggered. Sergio doesn't look at you the right way or something, and it doesn't respond immediately, or someone, there's a post online about some blog you wrote, and it's negative, and then all of a sudden you're triggered, and you can't talk, you don't breathe well, you get defensive, you close down, whatever it might be. When those triggering moments happen, and the emotions start to come up, and you don't know where they're coming from, or you find yourself shutting down, that's when you can do this other process, which I'll just vaguely talk about because it takes a little more detail. That's one of the books I'm working on right now, is getting this out to the general public. But whenever I have that feeling, I ask myself, okay, close your eyes, Jack. Where am I feeling that in my body? So let's say I'm feeling tension in my shoulders. Then I would ask myself, what color is it? How wide is it? How thick is it? Is it solid? Is it hollow? Is it wet? Is it dry? And I'm just trying to focus my sensation on this rather than, well, most of us, when we're uncomfortable, we want to get rid of the uncomfortable situation. So we have a drink, we go watch TV, we distract ourselves from it. So basically, if I allow myself to really feel it, and then inside of that sensation that I'm feeling, is there a feeling, an emotional feeling? And then you get in touch with that. And then we ride that back to the earliest time you can remember feeling that. And for most people, it's somewhere between the age of 2 or 3 and 8 years old. Where are you? I'm in the living room with my mother. What's happening? She's yelling at me. Then what decision did you make about yourself or about life or about relationships? Well, it's not safe to share the things you're afraid of because your mother will yell at you. You have to be tough. You have to be strong, whatever. And so then we can say, okay, what's the opposite of that? That would be more nurturing, more affirming belief. And, it's okay to express my feelings. It's okay to ask for what I want, whatever that might be. And then we'll have them, we call it future pacing it in neurolinguistic programming. Imagine yourself in future situations where you would have shut down doing the thing you want to do. And then basically we can also tap that in. There's a lot of affirmations for that and so forth. And then it becomes part of our ongoing reality. You talk about the happiness set point in your work, the happy for no reason. Well, we all have an emotional set point of how much we allow ourselves to feel, how much we allow ourselves to experience joy, whatever. And that can be raised as we let go of these limiting beliefs. And then what happens is you just show up, you're all available, you're present, you're not resisting anything, you're not protecting yourself from anything, you're just present, which is what we want to be. And that's the miracle zone you talk about, where you're in the flow rather than blocking the flow out of fear, out of limiting beliefs. So those are just 2 ways. And watch for a book from me about a year from now, and that'll all be in there.
Looking forward to that
Or
book.
take my
I know
seminar.
you've been working on that for
Yeah,
a while, and I'm really looking forward to that. And I've done
yeah,
both
I
of those
have.
processes.
Yeah,
I've,
and I
I've
do
done
that process in all my seminars. I do that process with people because I think it's literally one of the most powerful things you can do. And you know, eventually we'll have an app that goes with that and a CD you can, or not digital download these days, and you just go along with it. So eventually this will become self-guiding. You won't have to try to remember all that stuff.
Yeah, it's such a powerful process. I mean, both of them are. I do tapping when I'm on an airplane and there's too many bumps. I get scared. I do tapping there. And this process that you're speaking of is just, it's so powerful. I've done it with you. One of the things I appreciate about you is that you find what's best, what works, and you integrate it and you teach it in such a way that's simple and really accessible, usable. That's you're
Right.
let's get this to work kind of a guy.
I was going to say, I'm always looking for what's the easiest and fastest way to get the result you want. And I used to have people pounding on chairs with these batakas. They were these foam bats, getting all their feelings out, saying, I hate you, and so forth and so on. And now we realize we don't have to do that. We can go right to the core of the belief underneath all that. And so now it saves a lot of time. It's not as scary. And if someone teach me, like, close your eyes, think of the number 7 and the color yellow, and all these things will go away, I would do that because that would only take 10 seconds,
Right. Yeah, we're for what's most effective, what's going to work for people. So I'm going to ask you something
Right.
really personal. And
Okay.
what in your own life right now is most exciting to you? What is it that you feel like, oh my God, I'm 80, I've done so much stuff, but this is exciting to me still?
I think I'm in a transition phase actually, and what's happening, I'm starting to let go of a lot of things that I used to do, but sort of shrink my company and the size of the number of people that work here eventually, and I don't know what's going to emerge out of that. I think something more spiritual will be a focus of mine. I think so. I don't know. I think the thing that excites me most is there's a plant medicine in South America that the shamans use called ayahuasca. And basically, as one of my shamans said when I did a recent journey, he said, "You're drinking pure nature. And nature doesn't think, nature just is." And so if I throw a ball at you, you don't think, "Oh, there's a ball coming my direction. I better raise my hand, open my fingers. The ball hits my fingers. I better close it." You just do it, you know? And so basically, if we could be in life where we're just responding naturally in every situation to what is for the highest good, because it's naturally us, we're in the flow. And so for ayahuasca, I think I've done like close to 30 journeys over the last 5 years, 6 years. And every time I do it, I have insights and awarenesses about how to live my life better that blow me away. Actually, writing a book right now, Marci. I don't know if you know this. It's called Ayahuasca for the Soul, and
No, I
it's all
didn't
going to be
know that.
stories. Yeah, it's all going to be stories of people who had these experiences, and then they're going to share one of the journeys and what they got out of it. And I'll share one with you right now that I think I'm going to open the book with. You know who Jan Van Zandt is, right?
I do.
Yeah. So he's a good friend of Oprah's and Patty's and so forth. And she goes down to Rhythmia, where I go. It's a place in Costa Rica. And she just goes to be with a friend, has no idea this ayahuasca stuff is happening. And then she gets there and she decides to do it. So it's a liquid, you drink it, it's about a shot glass full, and then you lie down on a mattress, and then you have these what seem like hallucinogenic experiences, but they're way more profound than, say, the drug trips kids were doing in the 70s because it's more natural and it's more powerful. It's got a 2,000-year tradition behind it. Shamans are really trained really well. And what happens is she's now in the bathroom, and she's, because often you have to purge, they say. And all of a sudden, she starts to have this energy in her vagina. And she's going, "What the hell is this?" So what Mother Ayahuasca, because the medicine's a female energy, says to her, "You are now healing 17 generations of sexual abuse in your matriarchal line." And that's what you're doing right now. And it blew her away, of course. And then it said also, you're also healing 17 generations of what women couldn't speak because it wasn't safe to speak their truth. And so here now that ends with you, Ayanla, and all of us who are now in the feminist movement and, all of that. So I think that for me, that's an awareness that I don't know she ever would have had without ayahuasca. And I've had awarenesses about, Christ consciousness. I've had awarenesses about my own need to be important. I've had awarenesses where I thought I'd forgiven everybody and I hadn't. And I had to go in and forgive and let go. And as a result of that, my physiology changed, my back healed. Sometimes these minions come and do operations on you and you get healed. So for me, there's something magical. And I'll just end with this. The last time I was there, on a mattress next to me was a psychiatrist actually, from Denver. And I said, "Why did you come?" He said, "Because I want to check out and see if this is something I can recommend my clients to." And at the end of the 4 days, I said to him, "Is it?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I think 1 hour of ayahuasca or one night of ayahuasca is worth 20 years of therapy." And so for me, that is something. Well, remember we talked about faster and easier.
Yes.
So if I can get 20 years of therapeutic intervention done in a couple of nights with plant medicine, that to me is like extraordinarily valuable. So I want to make this more into the mainstream by writing that book.
You are so cutting edge, Jack. You are with what's next, what's next. And you're always finding that really what's next and bringing it to the masses. That is your purpose on the planet. I always love getting to talk with you. It's always fascinating. I always learn things. I always walk away inspired and thinking, "Oh, I'm going to do that." So I think that that's probably the case with everybody here who's listened to this. And I know that you have coming up a program, Breakthrough to Success, which is one of the courses I took from you that was just life changing for me. And I know you're going to be doing that process of the belief system breaking that we just spoke about during that, along with a million other things. And you are gifting all of us a 50% discount on this Breakthrough to
That's
Success.
true. Yeah, we're doing a Breakthrough to Success seminar coming up in October. It's the best training I do, and it's 3 days, and it's 3 full days. It's very, very powerful, and all the things we talked about today, except the plant medicine, are part of that. And basically, you're going to learn how to take responsibility for your life, how to get in touch with your passion and your purpose, and how to manifest that into a vision of your ideal life. So you're living in the miracle zone, as Marci calls it. And I think that really is where we all want to live. And so how can we do that? And then also, you want to manifest the things you want to manifest. So there's laws of manifestation. And if you understand how to use those, which we teach you, it's profound. And I would say this, Marci, we are offering a 50% discount to any of your students. And I will tell you, your students, when they come, are amazing. And when they leave, they think that what we just taught them is amazing. So it's a really good combination. And I'm really excited we get to work together to make this happen. And literally, people can go to jackcanfield.com/Marci. It'll help take you there. And basically, you can find out more about the training, where it is, when it is, and all that. I really strongly encourage you to do it. I don't know that I'll be doing this much longer, because I am kind of shifting everything. It takes a whole company to be able to put on those kind of events. And it's not a fear of missing out thing. I don't like to motivate people by fear. But the reality is, I think, we won't be doing a lot of these in the future. So if you think it's something you want to do, I would take advantage of it now and go there. And also,
I want to say something about
go
that
ahead.
because as
Yeah.
I've said, it's been your work and Breakthrough to Success has been life-changing for me. And every person I've shared it with goes and comes back and raves to me and says, "Thank you so much for telling me about this." So I agree. I think that one of the best ways that people can move more into the miracle zone is to break through to success, which is really the miracle zone. And so thank you for giving us that 50% off offer at jackcanfield.com/Marci. We'll put that in the show notes. And you're also giving us a free download of a visualization, guided visualization.
Yeah. There's a free gift for everybody there that you can just start to work with this right now. And so, as I said, I love helping you. You help me. We can help the world together. I think in a previous life, we might have been married for all I know. Who knows? We're such a good couple.
You were very kind to me in that life. Very good to me. And I think I was to you too.
Okay. I'll accept that.
It has to be, because it's been so great in this life. You've always been such a great support of me, and I love getting to support you. And I appreciate your work.
Let me say one more thing to make it happen. When you go to get this 50% off, there'll be a place for a promo code, and the promo code is MIRACLES, MIRACLES. So you should be able to remember that, because you're in the Miracles work with Marci.
Well, thank you, Jack, so much for all of this. I just, every time I'm with you, I'm inspired. You got the real secrets, tricks, tips of life. And so I always end with a quote. And today's quote, I'm putting two quotes together from the brilliant and amazing Jack Canfield, who said, "You only have control over three things in your life: the thoughts you think, the images you visualize, and the actions you take." And he also said, "If you can dream it, you can do it." So I thank you, Jack. And I thank everybody here for listening today, because I think this is, when more of us do this together, we together change the world. So I hope that you're feeling inspired and uplifted and more in the miracle zone after this time together. And if you enjoyed the episode, please share the Miracle Zone love with your friends and your family. You can also take our free 2-minute quiz to find out what your miracle superpower is. You just go to miraclezonequiz.com. And finally, I just want you to remember that your life of miracles is waiting for you. It is your birthright. And simply by being here and being in this energy and being in this wisdom that Jack just shared, you are taking a step forward into the miracle zone. So enjoy, and I send you my love.